Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the QUADRISE PLC Final Results Investor Presentation. Throughout today's recorded meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time just using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. Given the significant attendance on today's call, the company will not be in a position to answer all questions submitted. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and I'm sure the company would be most grateful for your participation. I'd now like to hand over to Non-Executive Chairman, Andy Morrison. Andy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the QUADRISE results presentation for the year ending 30th June 2025. With me today, we have Jason Miles, CTO, David Scott, CFO, and we have a new face, Peter Borup, the CEO, who was on his second day in the role. You'll hear more from Peter when we get to the Q&A later on. As usual, we've got lots of questions, so we'll skip through the presentation as quickly as we reasonably can in order to leave time for answers as many of those as possible. And if we don't manage to answer them all, we'll get back to the other ones afterwards, after the event. So for most of you, QUADRISE is not a completely new company. However, we are continually evolving and refining as we prepare for commercialization. And we are a technology company with patented emulsion fuels, and we're focusing on the decarbonisation of shipping, or reducing emissions from shipping, both carbon and NOx. And our strategy is to stimulate demand at the same time as creating supply hubs around the world. And we are only a small company, as you know, and so collaboration with partners is key to our strategy. And one of the things which I think we take heart from is that we're trying to do something, although it seems difficult at times, we're doing something which has actually been done before. And the oil emulsion business that originated in Venezuela reached a scale of 100,000 barrels a day. So if we can get into commercialization, we have a very good runway ahead of us, and it has been done before. And the year under review has been around getting ready for commercialization. And the fundraise that we did in January provided the firepower for us to make some significant moves, particularly in terms of resourcing ready for commercialization. So we appointed Linda Sorensen as head of marine, Tony Foster as a non-executive director with bags of shipping experience, and then most recently, as you know, Peter Borup's joined us as CEO. Of course, we would have wanted our projects to move faster, but overall, we are in a much better financial and strategic position than we were 12 months ago. And of course, Jason will come on to the projects in a few minutes. Also worth saying, I think, that the regulatory conditions remain supportive. We'll be looking out for the IMO ratification or otherwise of the emissions regulations later this month. But actually, we feel we're in a pretty strong position either way. If they're ratified, then great. If they're not ratified, then the period of uncertainty that will result actually probably favours transition fuels over the more ambitious fuel changes. So we can benefit from that. And this slide shows in diagrammatic form what is our business. The left-hand show or how it works. The left-hand side shows our products and product development, which is work we're doing on demand. So those of you who know us, we're familiar with our MSAR, BioMSAR, and BioMSAR Zero product slate. And the right-hand side shows the supply side, where we intend to operate through licensing and tolling agreements using our emulsion technology, either out of fixed installations or blend on board technology. And front and center of what we're doing, of course, is the maritime transport, the shipping industry, which is what we're trying to serve. We also have use cases for utilities and heavy industry, and our licensed partners could easily be in downstream oil and upstream oil as well. And just before I hand on to Jason, just a few more words about the EU emissions regulations, and this maps our products onto that evolution. And the MSAR product, as you can see in the top left, is quite well mapped onto the early stages of that of the regulations, and then BioMSAR and BioMSAR Zero come on later in terms of the regulations. However, there is also the ability for ship owners to pool their fleets. So if you've got 10 ships, you can put one on a bio-MSAR and average that across the fleet. So that's another way effectively of getting a lower level of overall performance by using bio-MSARs earlier than might otherwise be the case. And also bio-MSAR 0 could have application in areas where or particularly environmental sensitivity. So whilst MSAR is well suited to the immediate term, we do see markets developing more quickly than you might imagine from this chart in terms of bio-MSAR and bio-MSAR 0. Anyway, with that, I'm going to hand on to Jason for a roundup of the projects that I know you're all keen to hear about.
Thanks, Andy. So as investors are fairly well aware, I mean, and Andy mentioned earlier, our focus is really on stimulating demand in the main bunker hubs. Initially in ARA, where obviously we have the project that we're planning with Cargill and MSC in Antwerp. There's a demand requirement also in the Mediterranean, both with OCP, who is an industrial consumer, and also potentially obviously MSC and others in the future to cover requirements in the Mediterranean region. And then most recently we completed the trial in Panama with Sparkle Power on a power station there, 50 megawatt power plant. And then obviously with Valcor, we have an upstream project where it can produce a low sulfur, lower carbon fuel for the shipping sector ultimately. And there's been some progress made there, albeit a little bit slower than we would like. And then with a view to the future, obviously there's a requirement for on a large demand for bunker fuel in Singapore. So there's some progress that we've made there, but obviously with the addition of new resources, that's a focus for the future as well. So in terms of the plan for Antwerp, we have the terminal secured with MAC2. We signed the agreement earlier in the year with the MAC2 terminal. We've prepared groundworks in the terminal itself as well. So that terminal is ready, and the plan is for Cargill via a bunkering operator to supply the barge and also then the products, which will then toll convert into a bio-MSAR product. And that will then supply the Leandra 5, which is a 50,000 ton feeder container vessel with a very large Wärtsilä engine, which will use the main engine for on our fuels, MSAR and bio-MSAR. And the plan is to then springboard that to supply other users in that region, but also to obviously expand our network elsewhere as well. So in terms of the marine project, the three-way agreement, we're sort of in a similar situation as we were with the three-way agreement last year, which was finally signed in November. That then kicked off the requirement for bilateral agreements to be signed. We signed the first one with MAC2 in April. We have another agreement with Cargill that's been drafted, but that's pending then the final agreement, which is yet to be signed off between Cargill and MSC, which is for the trial fuel supply. And that's really an agreement which is stopping us getting us started. It's a blocker for us moving forward, but there's been progress most recently, and indeed this week we're on calls to discuss that particular agreement. So obviously with a view to planning in advance, there's groundwork that's been done, I mentioned before, with MAC2. It's quite a complex project, so there's a lot of work that needs to get done actually on the ground as well in terms of getting permits, and that's not only just an operating permit, it's a permits to apply to handle animal byproducts, because the glycerin comes from a used cooking oil base, and then there's work that's been done also with the ISCC to get the certification and proof of sustainability documents ready for the trial. So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Obviously the focus is now on getting that agreement signed and moving ahead. And with a view, obviously, to that being successful, and also in parallel, in that respect, we're also speaking with other ship owners as well, as part of this particular process to use the facility to supply others. With Morocco, again, we supplied the commercial ship framework last year. We were relocated to a new facility, which is where they ultimately are using large amounts of fuel oil. Unfortunately, that also brought in a requirement to get approvals from the original equipment manufacturer that supplies all the equipment, the kiln equipment, That's taken a bit longer to get that particular meeting arranged and get things sort of move forward so we can actually do the trial. In readiness for that, we've got all our equipment on site, as people may be aware. OCP are paying for the trial, so it's not costing us any money, but obviously it's costing us time. So we're escalated the issue within OCP, and we expect to get some positive outcome from that escalation. So let's wait and see. And in the meantime, obviously with a view planning for growth, looking outside of OCP, there are other large fuel oil users within the country as well, and indeed discussions are progressing with those counterparties. With Valcor, they took a little bit longer and had some issues with their drilling campaign, which I guess they publicised themselves as well. But that essentially, a lot of those issues have been resolved now. They found the technology that works, both in terms of the subsurface drilling campaign, and they've also got approvals to proceed with a project which is a pilot oil sands plant for 500 barrels per day. So that's progressing and due to be on stream in the second quarter of 2026. And we've been in sort of active dialogue with Valcor through the period to ensure that there's an opportunity for QUADRISE going forward. And most recently agreed a revised payment terms where they pay us a non-refundable deposit of $50,000 up front, and then restage the payment so that we get $300,000 in the second quarter. The remaining, basically the total of $1 million, then by January of next year, and then the third quarter gives us $500,000. So we're slightly behind in payments, but that's obviously built into now David's latest cash flow projections there. And we certainly see a large market for that particular product, and it's good that Valcor actually overcome some of the technical issues and are moving ahead, which obviously opens up funding for them as well. With Panama, we completed the trial in July. It was a very successful trial with a very happy customer at the end of it. We demonstrated the fuel for the first time on two large medium-speed MAN, now called Evolence engines, one 8 megawatts, one 4 megawatts, and these engines are used for power generation at that facility. That's created a lot of interest within the country that's looking for alternatives to heavy fuel for power generation. At the moment, following the successful test, our agents and ourselves are working with the ministries in Panama to get the approvals for MSOR and bio-MSOR as alternative fuels, alongside obviously other competing fuels like LNG, and then also progressing the fuel supply, the necessary fuel supply in that region as well, to supply not only Panama but other generators in the region, as well as the marine space. And then to follow on the other projects that we're working on, obviously we're developing various different agreements with suppliers of biofuels, really with a view to expanding our pipeline for biofuel components going forward. And that's a range of near-term technologies where the fuels are available today, so things like methyl esters, some of the sugars that come from obviously cellulosic material and ethanol production. Cashew nut shell liquid is another product being used in the marine space for biofuels. And then some of the future technologies which really are looking at the conversion of very abundant sustainable biomass and converting that into high value products, but also what's considered to be lower value products, which are ideal candidates as a low sulfur biofuel for the marine sector. So a lot of work's going on in the background to make sure we've got a very strong pipeline and answer the questions that the marine industry have as around the future of biofuels, because as a result of the marine regulations kicking in Europe, the European Union last year, there's certainly been a change in the mindset there, and biofuels are starting to be used, not only liquids but also gases. So we're mindful of that. We're making sure that we've got a unique offering that's palatable for a lot of ship owners. So I'll hand over to David and take you through the financials.
Thanks, Jason. Oh, one more for you.
One more, sorry. One for the fleet. He's pricing in to our industry as well. So I think, from that perspective, it's become an issue, which is obviously driving the use of alternative fuels and technologies, energy-saving technologies, which we also offer with MSOR.
Okay. So our results for the year, we had a loss of 3 million, which is very much in line with the year before, and also very much in line with our cash spend, which is obviously about £3 million per year at the moment. Now, the cash balance we had at year end was 5.9 million, thanks to the fundraise in January.
And we're still projecting that 5.9 million is going to be sufficient to take us through to revenues, to positive cash flow generation, and ultimately profitability. Now, when we do get to profitability, we've got some big tax losses there, as you can see, so there shouldn't really be much in the way of tax to pay for a while afterwards. So that's the financials in a nutshell. I'll hand back over to Andy now to talk about our human resources.
Yeah, thanks, David. And coming towards the end of the formal part of the presentation now, the resources has been a really key feature of our focus for this year, knowing that we need to get into commercialization and knowing how impatient we all are for success in that area. And so just recently, Peter's joined us. But even before that, we've had Linda and Tony on board, and we've seen a much stronger development pipeline than we've had in previous years. And so obviously business development doesn't really hit the R&S screens until you get the end of the process, but the pipeline is much stronger than it was this time last year, thanks to, in large part, to the work of Linda and Tony and the focus and that they're bringing to the sector. Jason, as you know, as you can tell, is still very much looking after the projects as Chief Technology Officer, and also the development of the technology and the product slate. And Phil Hill is moved over to Chief Commercial Officer, leading on the supply development, because obviously we need to be able to sign supply agreements alongside the demand side as well. So that's really been a key focus for us over the last few months. And the outlook for us, I think, is very promising. The regulatory environment continues to support our technology. We're relatively a drop in fuel, and therefore doesn't require the same amount of investment, and it can extend the useful life of the assets that ship owners already have, which is a big win if we can deliver that. And so our product slate is future proofed until 2050 and beyond. So we're in good shape with that as well. We will be continuing, obviously, to focus on the execution of the MSC trial and with Cargill once the contracts are signed, and we will be focusing also on the following up with Sparkle and with Morocco. And now that we have a way in a clearer path forward with Valcor, we'll be able to do that as well. We're in, as I said earlier on, we are in a much stronger position than we were 12 months ago, both financially and strategically. And as David's pointed out, we're funded through now to revenue and positive cash flow generation. So we're really excited about having having Peter join us on board and being able to lead ourselves into that new era of commercialization. So with that, we'll thank you, and we'll prepare for questions.
That's great. Andy, Jason, David, thank you very much indeed for updating investors. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the guys take a few moments to review your questions submitted already, I'd just like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Andy, if I may hand back to you to navigate us through the Q&A, and then I'll pick up from you at the end.
Thanks again, and thank you once again, everybody, for attending and your engagement by submitting all the pre-submitted questions and your live questions that we know are coming in. We have received literally hundreds of questions. So what we've done is we've grouped them together into key question areas, and we'll go through those now. And if we don't get to specific questions, then we will come back to those after the presentation and try and answer them online. And so I'm going to go first with the grouped questions from the pre-submitted, and I'm going to give Peter a chance to talk. So Peter, what excited you about joining QUADRISE, and can you please tell us something of the changes you're planning to make and how you will leverage your impressive network and expertise to help us get from R&D to a cash-generating enterprise?
Well, I'm coming out of shipping, where I've been for 30 years, so working with some of the big companies, but also some simpler and more straightforward. I've been living with the many different regulatory changes that have been coming in the last 15 years. And it's quite clear that the shipping owning community is confused, and there are a few big corporates that have good plans for how to comply. but there are a lot of people waiting to see what is actually going to happen. So I see that some of the future fuels, whether it's methanol or ammonium or nuclear power, which are being circulated and a few people are betting on, are future fuels if they're even going to prevail. But right now, there are a lot of things that can be done. So you can put on rotor sails. It will take you 8 years to pay back on that. You can put on silicon paint on your hull side and save 8% per year. Probably that's a good deal. But you also have products like QUADRISEs. But if you add them together, it's a significant improvement. So you can actually get some agency regardless of whether the IMO rules will get adopted here in October or whether EU will go ahead as planned. So for a lot of ship owners who need to comply, who needs to do it on short notice, I think we have a very good offering. On top of that, I like the organization. I like that we have strong people. I like that we've now beefed up, so we have a stronger organization to address also the shipping community. I think there are a lot of things that we now, with a strong organization, can do more of. I think we've been quite exposed on some projects where we decided to look at it as a single project that we want to finish and then move on. But I think we're now at a point where the environment is in our favor and we need to put more things in the sea, so to speak, so we can work in parallel. So have more than one trial at a time, start talking to flag states and regulatory authorities. So we have a lot to do. I'm also humble about the scale of the challenges, but it's all doable.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to turn to Jason now. Can you give a specific update on why the MSC and Cargill agreements are taking so long and why MSC have not prioritized this, and how confident are we about it concluding? You did address this partly in the comments you've already made, but maybe just as this was a very frequent question, maybe you could just reiterate that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the last 12 months, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes in the external world as well, in terms of outside of this particular project, right? So, they've had to deal with not only some of the political issues facing the world, but also some of the regulatory changes as well themselves. So obviously mindful of that, their focus is not always on Team QUADRISE. So from their perspective, we're coming to the point now of the agreement signature, and they're looking at the project obviously as in terms of the world beyond the trial as well, right? So it's important for them essentially that not only they're doing the trial, but they're going to be converting vessels in the future to actually operate on, not only MSAR, bio-MSAR, but also MSAR as well. So, there's some, we're going through that process at the moment before sign off, which we went through, last year with a 3-way agreement as well. So, we're confident obviously of that process, concluding positively, but there's obviously no guarantee until the contract's executed. I think importantly in the meantime, we've done everything that we can to be ready for that signature, bar actually deploying the equipment into Antwerp. So, we are very, very ready. We're in a good position in terms of the permits that are needed, the certification for the fuel, which is very important, which I mentioned before. But also, we're mindful that, as Peter mentioned, we need to be ready, and we are already speaking with other owners as well, and have spoken with them during the year, such that, when Antwerp's up and ready, and even beforehand, there are other parties that can come into the game as well, because MSC are one company, and they're very respectful that they view that other companies will be part of this journey as well. They don't wish to be exclusive at this moment in time. So it's a slightly frustrating time for the company while we're waiting for this to get done. But we're doing everything we can, and like I say, I think there's some of the questions around how regularly are we speaking with MSC and Cargill, and the answer is at the moment almost weekly or daily. We had meetings this week just with the key stakeholders. So, but it's a complicated, world and landscape at the moment. But we certainly think we've got a fit.
Okay, thanks, Jason, and maybe another couple of words, Peter, from you. I mean, what's your approach? How will the company and the new management ensure that we avoid? What's the approach to avoid further endless delays to MSC and other projects? How do you hope to address?
I think it starts by respecting that we don't have total agency. We can't do everything here. We don't call all the shots. So we have to make sure that we're less vulnerable to single projects, So we need more trials with other owners, and maybe pig owners that are not as big and as complex as the blue chip owners we've been working with so far, which are great companies, a lot of technical expertise. Their word carry a lot of weight, so they have absolutely been the right ones to go to, but we can mix it up. So that's one. The other is that when we start doing trials, we should make sure that it leads into a commercial agreement pathway automatically, right? So given certain milestones or certain test results, there is an offtake agreement. We need to make sure that in the key shipping areas, whether that is around Singapore and the Malacca Strait, or it's in Antwerp where we have already set up, but also other places, that we are aware of what are the suppliers of fuel to us, what is sort of the regulatory environment locally, so we are ready for that. I think also we need to map out, what are the alternatives out there in terms of other transition fuels, because in most cases it's not a zero-sum game; it's a plus-sum game. It's cumulative, the effects of what others do and what we do. So if we can help each other get on the map, we should do that. But first and foremost, reduce the risk in single projects and start operating in parallel.
Okay, thank you. And switching tack now to Sparkle. When do you think, Jason, that the commercial agreement with Sparkle is going to be ready?
Yeah, I mean, we have at the moment, we've got resources obviously very much deployed looking at this, including our agents in Panama. Obviously, one of the key aspects is making sure that the fuel can be actually utilised commercially in Panama. So we're focusing on getting those approvals from the Ministry of Energy, and in fact, meetings are happening this week, both the Ministry of Energy, together with the Ministry of Hydrocarbons as well, to make sure that there's both our fuels are actually on the list of approved fuels for commercial use within Panama. And then, I mean, ultimately, there's a range of suppliers to that particular part of the world, which are large refineries, and we're speaking with various parties to get those agreements. Basically get an agreement with one of those parties to actually deliver the necessary fuel to Sparkle initially. We're in the process of obviously looking at increasing demand in the region as well. So following the successful test that we had at Sparkle, we're speaking with other power plant operators in the region as well. Not only Panama, where fuel power stations are sort of used mid-merit, but also in places like Honduras and also Nicaragua as well, where fuel is used for baseload power generation. So that provides a more stable offtake. So for a refinery point of view, that's an important feature. And obviously coming back to Panama, obviously the marine, it's a marine hub as well. Has a lot of traffic going through it, and it's a good bunker hub to be located. So that fits very nicely with initiating supply to Sparkle with a view to it growing and ultimately supplying a range of different customers. So it should be an attractive prospect. In terms of those commercial agreements, when they will get done, I can't put a timing on that at the moment because it only just kicked off in the last few months. So there's definitely resources deployed to it, obviously including Phil.
And you touched on this, Jason, in the presentation, but since it was a frequently asked question, maybe we should address it again with any further comments. What's the hold up in Morocco, and when can we expect OEM sign off, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously had a delay over, we were trying to get things done before the summer. Summer kicked in with the OEM. So this has currently been escalated, as I mentioned in the presentation, within OCP. Also our agent, Eunice Mamar, is on the case as well to get this particular impasse finalised, such that we can get the trial underway. Obviously, if there's any issues, then we have equipment that we can redeploy elsewhere. But it's important to say that the equipment is there. We've got a pumping and heating unit and an and an emulsion plant there. The emulsion plant we're actually hiring off E&H. It's not our unit, so and that hire charge is being obviously charged to OCP. So it's not our equipment really at loss here. But obviously there's a time perspective where we'd like to get the trial finished and get that contract either ahead. And in the meantime, in terms of risk management, we're speaking with other large fuel oil consumers as well, again to increase the volume of the opportunity within the country, which is progressing well.
Yeah. So one of the other questions was about what parallel opportunities are we progressing in the country? And I think you just answered that already, Jason.
Yeah.
David, there's one here for you. Please, can you reiterate the QUADRISE's cash position, and if it's the case that the business is funded to July 2026, taking into account that the new hires that have come on board?
Yeah, so at year end, we had 5.9 million, and our projections are such that that is sufficient to take us through the revenues, to profitability, etc. So we wouldn't put a date on that because that's going to take us all the way through. And that includes all the costs associated with the new resources we brought in. So I think that's covered it.
Yeah, and can you also give an update on the, maybe Jason, either one of you, update on the Valcor payments, and if Valcor's neighbours are interested in partnering with us?
For me, if that's all right. But yeah, I mean, obviously the invoice has gone in for the $50,000, which is this is basically a non-refundable deposit. So that's that's in the process. And in terms of the other the other prospects in the region, obviously there's Trio Petroleum, I think was mentioned in one of the questions, and Tomco. I mean, those relationships are really managed via Valcor. They have very good relationships with both of those companies anyway. So really Valcor is the lead party that we're dealing with within Utah initially, but that's not to say there aren't other opportunities in the US that we look at from time to time as well.
Okay, and I'm going to turn to you, Jason, for the answer to this, but it's just worthwhile, before I do, it's worthwhile mentioning, I think, that because it's about Southeast Asia, that the one of the things that Peter brings to the table is a significant Asian experience, Asian working experience, and so I think we'll be able to, in future years, I'm sure that the answer to this question would come from Peter, but in the meantime, I'm going to ask Jason, what is the update on the Southeast Asian refinery project, and what's the plan to stimulate potential MSAR, bio-MSAR demand in the Singapore area?
Yeah, I mean, the refinery project that we probably talked about last year has been on hold while the client that owns the refinery has been reviewing a quite a significant upgrade to that particular refinery. That decision has not yet been made, so all the time, obviously, that decision has been in pause mode. We're unsure as to whether the MSAR project will move ahead or not. In the meantime, I think the decision is the decision's been made already to speak with other stakeholders more in the marine space anyway, in that particular region. It's still a significant hub for fuel oil. It's the main place to be, so it's important to be there. So discussions have been ongoing with other stakeholders in that particular region, including some of the very large entities like the Global Centre for Marine Decarbonisation, etc., to get that moving ahead.
Yeah, and in response to a particular question around it, are there any updates on Maersk, Saudi Arabia, Carlyle Group, JGC, or the Middle East, and other projects, basically?
Nothing significant to note at this moment in time. I mean, each of those counterparties have their own merits. Especially, obviously, Maersk we're in reasonable contact with as well, via Vitoro. Obviously, Vitoro are part owned by Maersk anyway. So there's an opportunity there that we can explore to go back to Maersk. Obviously, with Peter's background, there's an opportunity possibly to dust off the file with Maersk. But frankly, our focus is on MSC, and obviously there's some other opportunities that are similar in scale anyway that we can focus on. And ultimately, I guess the decision this year was to focus on some of the key projects, and some of these other projects mentioned were maybe deemed a little bit of a distraction while we wanted to get the main projects underway. But now we have the resources, that could be a time to relook at those. But it's too early to say.
Okay, thank you. This one looks like it's going to be one for me, actually. How have the organisational changes which you have mentioned strengthened QUADRISE's business pipeline, and what impacts have Dr. Linda Sorensen and Tony Foster made to QUADRISE during 2025? And I did touch on this actually in my comments on the presentation, and really the business development pipeline and our understanding of the whole sector and what needs to be done has advanced considerably during the year. And you don't always see the outputs from business development work until they turn into contracts. But we have a much better handle on who are the contacts in the shipping companies that we want to target, and we've made significant inroads. We were attending more conferences. Now Linda particularly is very active in in getting us out there. Those of you who follow us will know that we've also contracted Blue Comms as a marine sector focused PR agency, and that's been giving dividends in terms of the press that we've been able to achieve in amongst customers. And some of that crosses over into the investor space. I'm sure some of you will have seen it if you follow on social media. So generally speaking, I would say that we're in a much better, as I said before, we're in a much better strategic position than we were 12 months ago, and that's thanks also to the much better financial position that we were able to create with the help of you as investors at the beginning of the year. I mean, Jason, maybe you could talk to this in terms of projects, and maybe come back to Peter for some comments as well. What deliverables should shareholders be looking for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, conclusion of the MSC agreement with Cargill will really provide a launch pad to real project progress to report to shareholders, and milestones that commence with obviously the deployment of the facility at Mach 2, the proof of concept trials on MSAR and BioMSAR on the MSC Leandra, and then the operational trial. Right, all of these give us very good news flow to obviously accelerate some of the other business development activities with other marine customers. Obviously, Morocco is we're waiting for one meeting to be concurred, and then the kickoff of the project we expect. And then in terms of the Panama opportunity, obviously there are other clients to speak with, agreements to get signed off, approvals to get obviously completed within Panama as well. So each of those projects really provide a great sort of opportunity to move forward, as well as the Valcor obviously project moving forward to get the final samples. Now they've actually optimized the production facilities. Samples are imminent to get that work done, and then marketing to start. So it's such that we're ready for when their oil sands plant gets up and running in the second quarter of next year. We're ready with the fuel. And we basically invested in our own systems to do some of the pre-treatment of these oil samples as well, which fits quite nicely with the work we're doing with the MSC project in terms of solids filtration, etc., which I won't bore you with today. But there's quite a lot of work, obviously, at QRF that's preparing for that testing to be done. So that gives us a good platform moving forward, as well, alongside obviously the development of the biofuel platform, which for us is a very good door opener to the marine companies in our space, and also the oil companies and energy companies that we deal with, as well as the trading companies. We have something very unique, very much of interest at the moment to the sector. So we're in a good position from that perspective. But obviously, getting agreements across the line and getting this implemented and done safely. We know that when with Sparkle, when we get the opportunities to complete a trial, we do it exceptionally well. So it's just a question of getting these agreements signed off now to get moving.
Okay, thanks, Jason. So that brings us to the end of the summary pre-prepared questions and answers that we had. Are we able to access the live questions?
Personally, possibly, although there's some other questions probably.
Yeah. Okay, we will carry on then if we haven't got the live questions immediately to hand. So if it's another question about going back to MSC, a little bit more detail. If all the equipment and necessary permitting is in place, why not install the MMU and the associated equipment into the Mach 2 facility to bypass the chicken and egg scenario that has been holding the company back? Surely this removes the sole reliance on MSC, especially if Cargill QED have a tolling agreement drafted and the barge secured.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it incurs quite a large cost to us to deploy the equipment still. So at the time where we don't have a trial agreement signed with any counterparty, which is at this moment in time where we are, is what we're waiting for. It's been the decision of the company to not deploy the equipment to site, to have everything ready, and to basically do all that we can. But that additional expense, which not only costs us money, but it costs us time of our resources as well, is something which we decided is not being. We've decided against it for financial reasons. Which I think is important, and I think the build it and they shall come approach is something that we probably want to avoid, because it potentially, you end up filling up a jetty also at Mach 2 with a facility that's then costing us rental and getting in their way. So we want to make sure that we work well with counterparties in that regard.
Okay. Have we discussed the MSAR adoption with Cargill for their vessels after the MSAR proof of concept? If so, can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, Cargill obviously have a large fleet. Obviously, launched a very recent bunkering joint venture also with Hafnia. We have had discussions with Cargill in the past, and there's very much they're very much interested in seeing the initial results of the MSC trial, to see how that goes first of all on the two-stroke engine, and then obviously that would be something that we could be progressing with them, amongst others. I mean, Cargill wouldn't be the only counterparty in time.
Yeah. Another one for you, Jason. What's happened to the motor yacht trial? Why has it been extended by such a time?
Yeah, it's really readiness on behalf of Focus Motor Yachts. So we're using our relationship with Vitoro, which is where the Focus Motor Yachts opportunity came from, to progress that matter. There has been some other work that's been ongoing with BioMSAR 100 in terms of engine testing. But yeah, in terms of the vessel trial with Focus Motor Yachts, that's really been delayed at their end. They've gone through some changes this year as well. So we're waiting for that to happen. It's been delayed.
Okay. Do you want, Peter, you've got the live questions there. Do you want to?
We have a couple of live questions. So the first one is whether we think that the IMO rules measures, if they're adopted, if it means that EU will cancel fuel EU immediately. And as a former ship owner, I'd like to take that one. Obviously, the fuel EU were enacted exactly because there was not an international agreement. And what most ship owners have been calling for is a level playing field. So the fact that IMO now comes in with stronger measures, but probably poorer enforcement, at least seen from the outside, and even EU's enforcement is still to be sorted out. I know that amongst a number of large ship owners, there's speculation that it might be cancelled, but it would be something that the EU has to do on its own. I'm not sure about that. What I am sure about is that both measures are actually to QUADRISE's advantage. If there's clarity about the future fuels and fines and rewards from the European Emissions Trading Scheme, we will benefit from that. But in the absence of clarity, the best place to look for ship owners if they want to meet some of these targets are the rotor sails, the silicone paint on the hull, and QUADRISE's products, right? So I think regardless, we are in a fairly good position. But still remains the fact is that we still have to execute. I think we have a great strategy. We have a good organization. We're in a world where we're not the biggest creature in the sea, but there are a lot of things we can do, and we just need to make sure that we focus on pushing on all fronts. And the organization we have in place now is going to help with that.
Are there any other ones you
There are a couple of other ones as well. What has held up the MSC contract? Why is there a lack of urgency on behalf of the company, which should benefit enormously from our products? I think that relates to whether MSC should have signed a long time ago. I think most of the big players in shipping, and I can't really speak for MSC, but I think I can speak generically for big companies, particularly European, who have been leading the way in terms of in terms of alternative fuels and meeting the CO2 zero emissions early. It's a complex world, right? And the IMO standards just means that compliance means something else. And for many of them, they're looking at what are the measures we can do to make sure that we are compliant next year, in 3 years, and in 5 years. So if you're sitting as a big company looking at QUADRISE's products or other products, your primary concern will be to be in compliance, and then secondarily, exactly what is the technology you want to use. So my impression is that they're keen to pursue this, but also that we need to make sure that we can supply to them in the volumes that they need for some time forward.
Anything else? Yeah, look over.
There's one question that I think David has answered well about when we believe to be in positive cash flow from projects. I don't know if you want to add any detail or.
Yeah, I don't think I've answered when we're forecasting that, but current projections are that's planned for Q1 2027.
Then there is a question about how QUADRISE could address the tramping markets. Are there any operators who don't require worldwide bunkering? Now that's where I come from, obviously. And for those of you who don't know what tramping markets are, it's the bulk carrier and tanker fleets that tend not to run on fixed or regular schedules, but will call many different ports, and they only really know 3 to 6 weeks in advance exactly which port they would be in. So in terms of supply and distribution of QUADRISE's products is a separate challenge. I think for many of them, we're appealing to different things. Number one, we are cost effective. Number two, we help them reduce emissions, but also with the European emissions trading scheme, there can be real value in being a good corporate citizen and actually under emitting, because you can sell these credits. And the big company like Norton, which is one of the biggest tramp operators, have recently announced that they are doing deals with people like Microsoft and other American IT companies who have an enormous need for offsets for their own emissions, and they can buy them from people like Norton. And the going rate right now, I believe, is around €340 per CO2 ton emitted. So this is a real business. So you may not have to run on QUADRISE's product all the time. But if you can pick it up in Singapore, if you can pick up in Antwerp, you're covering two major areas. So I do think we can address that also for the operators.
Okay. There's a question that I got here from the pre-submitted, Peter, which is you could perhaps take as well. It says, given your history with the AP Moller-Maersk, are you looking to involve them in the MSAR and bio-MSAR trials in the future?
I mean, the great thing about shipping is that there are so many companies out there, and many of them are first-class corporate citizens, and they have great expertise. Also, technically, AP Moller stands out as one of the preeminent ones. So I think we should talk to AP Moller, make sure we know where they're heading. They're running a very large fleet, so they have clear policies that occasionally change on how they want to achieve their targets. But I don't think we can afford not to talk to AP Moller. But we can't, of course, force them to use our products, and they may have different policies. They may have a different investment horizon, but they have already invested in dual fuel ships that uses methane and I believe also ammonia. And this may be a 5 or 10 year time horizon before they actually have the supply. But obviously, we should have the dialogue, and we will continue that. We already have one, but there are plenty of other first-class companies out there that have strong technical departments, that has a strong interest in this, and we shouldn't rule them out either just to have just one or two very big companies. And there are plenty of very strong companies. And as we've said already, I think it's crucial that we don't play on just one on red or black in this game. We need to have more partners in this because we will need that.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to come on to a couple of questions for Jason again about, but it's more on the biofuel side. So with the addition of glycerol to the bio-MSAR mix, how much does that lower safe storage temperature of the product compared to MSAR, glycerol having antifreeze qualities? With that in mind, have any operators been approached regarding its viability in Arctic operations where environmental performance is paramount?
Yeah, we have spoken with certain clients who do operate in that part of the world, and obviously that is a feature that is attractive for them. You know, it does reduce the freeze point of the temperature by about 10 degrees. Although we always recommend really that the fuel is handled at a normal storage temperature of around 25 degrees. So it wouldn't take away the need for tank heating as an example, but is a useful safety feature if nothing else. So in that regard, yes, I mean, it's a great feature, as well as it's obviously safe to handle as well compared with the other opportunities. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the Arctic operations has other features. You know, the ships that operate in that part of the world, they have requirements also, specific requirements to be able to break the ice. So the engines have to run on max power at full load. So you know, that brings in some other conversion requirements as well for ships in that part of the world, which you know, could incur a minor incremental cost over the usual conversion to MSAR. But that's certainly something we've looked at.
Okay, thanks. There's one more question I'm going to ask Jason in a minute, and then really the majority of the remaining questions are kind of variations on a theme. So after this next question, I'm going to just turn to Peter to wrap up with the ideas of how you're going to approach the next few months. But BioMSR Zero can cut CO2 emissions by 85%, and its feedstock comes from renewable biomass waste. This seems like the holy grail for a combustion fuel. Have you any calculations yet as to how its cost will compare with existing fuels, especially B100?
Yeah, I mean, there are numbers that we're putting together at the moment. Obviously, there's a range. I think I showed in the pipeline. There's a range of different opportunities and feedstocks that we can utilise to make BioMSR Zero. The first derivation of that was a blend of FAME and glycerin, and that offered at least a 5% fuel saving in terms of its manufacture cost, and then potentially another 5% through the efficiency benefits. So that's a starting point. I think from our perspective, that work continues. That's a very good starting point, and it's a very, if you look at opportunities that are coming up in the marine sector that have only this year really opened up in terms of some of the mission control areas in the Mediterranean, as an example. People are starting to utilise biofuels or B100 fuels as an alternative to gas oil, which is used in these emission control areas, especially for the ships that don't have scrubbers on. So or even the ones with scrubbers and open loop. So I think there's an opportunity there to further develop the cost advantage of BioMSR Zero or B100, and it's but for sure whether it's a holy grail or not, the shipping industry ultimately still likes a low cost feedstock, and they'll comply with the regulations as they need to. So it might be the holy grail from an environmental perspective, but it might not be the holy grail from a shipping perspective. But there's definitely a demand for B100 and BioMSR Zero, and that's an area where obviously we're ramping up some of the testing that we've been doing on that particular product as well.
Okay, and just to sort of set up your thoughts, Peter, your sort of final thoughts for this session. Are you aware that 63% of QED's owners are retail shareholders, and how will this influence you? And given the high average age, it says here, of the retail shareholders, can dividends be monthly, please? And if that's what retail shareholders want. And at the same time, ask another question. You can comment on one or both of these. So a comment made really. I congratulate Jason on getting us inside some of the biggest companies in the world. And Peter, what is your plan to capitalize on this springboard?
I mean, one of the questions I have here is, what do I bring to the table, actually, apart from my network? And I think one of the things I do bring to the table is that I'm really, really restless. And I think right now, we're at a point where we need to start taking advantage of the great technology we have and the reputation we have in the market. So I think that, we can make this very complex, but at the end of the day, within the next couple of months, I would want us to have signed the trial with MSC and Cargill and one more player. And within the next 6 months, I would want us to have started these trials. And these are critical because we need the approval from the main engine manufacturers to get on with the selling, right? And I'm not underestimating how difficult it will be to sell, because it's, you never have 100% hitting ratio when you're selling, but we can improve it. But before we can really sell, we need to have these letters of no objection in place. So that's the first priority. Operating in a fairly complex area, because it's not just about selling, it's also about getting approvals, right? And about getting the fuel. So we need to make sure we start developing sources of fuel, of procurement of that are reliable and safe in at least 2 areas. For me, that would be Singapore and Northern Europe, as it looks now. And then we need to go and visit suppliers, clients. We have competing ideas, and I can see so have the investors, on what kind of clients should we focus on first. Should we take the big ones that give early cash flow, but where you probably don't have a hitting ratio of 10%, or maybe less? Or should you focus on the smaller players like you find in the shipping market, and then have a higher hitting ratio, presumably? I think for now we need to do both. But clearly, as you can also hear from this presentation, our focus is very much the emphasis on the shipping markets and these players. So let's get these letters of no objection. Let's get the fuel supply sorted, and then try to sell in the meantime as well, subject to all these things being in place.
Well, we're delighted to have you on board, Peter, and look forward to working with you on those things. And I'm sure that shareholders will have been pleased today to have had a chance to start to get to know you. And I'm sure that there'll be plenty of other opportunities going forward. I'd like to thank everyone as well for taking the time today to listen in and to engage as fully as you have with the presentation and the questions. We are, I think, as I commented in as part of the results, in a much stronger position in terms of financially and strategically with the resources in place now than we were 12 months ago. And we are really excited about what we can do together as a expanded team. And we look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. Hand back to you for a closeout.
That's great. David, Andy, David and Jason, thank you very much indeed for updating investors. If I could please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure it'll be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of QUADRISE PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today.